Did that music wake up the rest of you? Because I know I'm awake now.
What? What?
What?
I'm so happy I don't use headphones. This is great.
Welcome, everybody, to Fourth and Frames, the fantasy football podcast for fantasyandframes.com. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and we have a pretty awesome collection of people tonight. Let's start off with our guest, Lauren Carpenter. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Would you please tell the Four-Eyed fans where they can find all of your work, because you are everywhere, and it is fantastic following you.
Thank you. So, yes, I am in a lot of places. It's pretty crazy, but you guys can find all of my work on my website. Yes, I am a few days behind. That should just be my tagline from now on. Stepmom Lauren, don't Google me. My website's a few days behind. And my website is stepmomlauren.com. And you guys can find me on social media at stepmomlauren.
Fantastic. And she writes for the Fantasy Footballers, Fantasy Pros, Roto World. She is one of the most humble people, in the industry.
I better humble you, Jorge.
Exactly. Down.
Hashtag owned. Anyhow, so very happy to have Lauren back on with us again. Nate Markham, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing good. Lauren, good to have you back. You're on our show way too many times for such an important week as well. That's honestly, thank you. This is a big one. There's a lot of pressure on you because no one listens to me, so I got it easy.
Right. No, exactly.
You have, semifinals.
They're important. It's crazy. It's crazy. But good news is I am actually out of all my own fantasy playoffs. So this is all I have is dedication to y'all. So you guys get 100% of this fantasy brain up here that can't set her own lineups.
And with that, Teddy Ricketson, how are you?
Doing well. My feedback from my wife, who tuned in on Sunday, said that not enough people in Fantasy and Frames were wearing frames. So I had to wear my blue light glasses because I'm a millennial.
Oh
so
my God, me too. I'm not a millennial, but I do have blue light glasses.
Yeah.
And Nate, of course, is bucking the trend and saying,
but you know what he does have? He has that Ryan O'Reilly jersey right there. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I could be wearing my Ryan O'Reilly replica MVP ring, but I didn't want to show you all up with my bling. So
yeah, these two can talk about they're blue in the face, and trust me, I have been there. And it is
blue in the face. I see what you did there, Jorge.
Very thank you. Actually, I wasn't trying to do that, and that just happened naturally. So
that's the brick. They just placed that brick right there, Lauren, down at the Scott Trade. They did the brick walk, and so Carrie and I got one, and we're supposed to go down there and check it out at some point. I'm sure it's going to be
freaking awesome. That is super cool. I think both my brothers got one as well. That is super awesome. Yeah,
very good.
Sorry, they're all together.
I know we're nuts. St. Louis hockey.
I've learned so much, like just about how seriously you all take high schools and where you go to school and all that jazz. It's
Stanley Cup is there. Yes, this has turned into a hockey podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
this happens every time. Poor Jorge. And now Teddy has to deal with it. I'm sorry. We are crazy St. Louis people.
I'm good.
See, there you go. Oh, too bad about that playoff berth.
Yeah, we're allergic to them. It's fine.
That's fine.
You have a Stanley Cup. You're fine.
Well, the problem is Tom Dundon and what he did to the AAF. But other than that, it's fine.
It's okay. I have the Panthers. Oh, wait.
What's going on, dudes?
Football.
Yeah. You got the Braves too, right? Isn't that what you said?
Yeah. Speaking of bricks, I have one at the Braves Stadium. So there you go.
Awesome. Yay.
Let's go sports.
And on a related note, our final guest for the evening, David Ibrahim from fantasygo.com. How are you doing, David? Technical difficulties. Fantastic. Okay,
he's doing great.
He's doing
Par
great.
for the course.
I totally just talked over Teddy. Teddy, please just virtually smack me next time that happens.
No, ma'am. Not with my wife watching.
Just be like, lady, quiet you.
Right. Yeah.
Hashtag the right answer. Good job, Teddy.
Well played.
That was always the right answer.
So yeah, Rob Gronkowski is the number one tight end of the week because
yeah,
he's a big Rob Gronkowski fan. So any chance he gets an opportunity to talk about Rob Gronkowski,
usually every day, once a day, sometimes twice. Yeah,
for me it's Ryan Tannehill, but I digress. So head over to fantasyandframes.com this week. We have our recap from this past weekend, as well as all the waiver wire articles for offense and defense. Tomorrow we get our start and sit article out, as well as our 4-8 observations. We profile one player each week. Teddy, you're doing Brandon Ayuk this week, I believe that is correct.
I'm taking a shot at it. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so we may or may not be talking about him a little bit later. So stay tuned for that. And with that, we kind of insinuated it a little bit earlier. It's week 15. It's semifinals time. One could make the argument that this is probably the most important start and sit show of the year. This is probably one of the most important lineup decisions you're going to be making this year because let's face it, and I know I'm dooming myself for next week's show, but when you get to week 16, you probably have a really good idea of who you're keeping in your lineup and who you're not keeping in your lineup at this point. You're going to roll with who brought you to the dance more often than not if there's not an injury or whatnot. And if there is some injury or there is some COVID-related thing or there's something that miraculously happens this weekend that warrants being talked about, we will talk about it obviously next Wednesday. But we got to get to the championship first. And this is the game. These are the games that are going to decide that. So with that, let's just get into it. We don't want to waste your time. We just want to get all this information to you so you can make your decisions going into this week. Let's start with quarterbacks.
Jorge, real quick, though, also, you mentioned something very important is I don't know if this is a start. Yeah, I know. Exactly. I'm going to give you credit.
That rarely happens. That's good to know. Thank you. Okay.
It is not necessarily a start and a quote-unquote sit episode because if I have a sit that is someone that you have no other better option, I'm not telling you just to dump the guy and pick up something else, pick up some scrap heap, but I'm telling you to probably temper expectations.
I love this. Remember, we had this conversation about Ryan Tannehill. Was it a couple months ago? I'm really appreciating this. Really appreciating this. Continue, Nate.
And Jorge has subsequently picked up and dropped Ryan Tannehill about 11-7 times since that last conversation.
Well, I picked him up 1171 times. Okay, so he's back with me. All right.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt.
Please
continue.
No. Let's get going with quarterbacks. Let's talk about a few quarterbacks. Let's start with some quarterbacks that we're feeling comfortable with. And Lauren, why don't we start with you? Tell us about a quarterback or two that you are really feeling good about this week.
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of the obvious ones I think that we're going to be starting. I don't necessarily want to talk about those unless somebody else wants to bring them up. I want to bring up the ones that if you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. My only option here is to either start your backup or maybe look to stream the position. And there are 3 guys I think that you can look at. Probably not available, streamable, but Tom Brady. I really like his opportunity this week. Safer play a little bit is going to be Phillip Rivers. And let me see who else I have here. One that I'm like not super excited about, but may be a desperation play is going to be Jared Goff. But of those 3, I want to roll with Tom Brady, TB12.
I'm glad you brought up Phillip Rivers because he kind of ties into the narrative that I'm going to spin now. And that is in the preseason, I did this series of articles where I was looking at what are the metrics that you should really look at when you're analyzing which players you should invest in come draft season. And when you get the quarterbacks, what's the infamous saying? We got to use the cheat codes. Quarterbacks that have the cheat code, they get the rushing yards, they provide a solid floor, they go with them. And I made the argument that the cheat code could be 2 types of people. It could be those who run a lot or those who have high passing volume, high yardage, a la Jameis Winston last year compared to a Lamar Jackson who got you the points on the ground, Winston through the air. So that being said, I'm with you with Phillip Rivers. He's 8th in passing yards per game. Excuse me. The Texans are allowing the 8th most passing yards to quarterbacks per game. The past 4 weeks, he's been averaging close to 20 fantasy points per game. Ironically, in that time, T.Y. Hilton has also seen a resurgence. So it's amazing. Your deep threat wide receivers catching passes and scoring points, and therefore you benefit. That's amazing analysis right there by Jorge. A couple of
the big buck.
I just want to put something in for Tom Brady real quick too. I did have him in this already when I was doing my notes, but something very important to know as well, especially for your lineups at running back, Ronald Jones is now on the COVID reserve list. So that does limit the run game that they, I guess, kind of had, if that's what you want to call it. So going to be more passing and probably more passing for Tom Brady. Just real quick. I know. Dare I say a Trubisky start? Jeremy. Literally, I have that exact. Did my article publish? Because that is exactly what I said, almost word for word in Fantasy Pros. I swear to God.
Yeah, Ryan Weiss got mad at me when I was mentioning Trubisky going forward 2 weeks ago.
Hey, you said his name right. That's awesome.
I know. I learned that's 80% now. I got that correct, just so you know. And I also get now scratch off 2 of the 3 starts that I had because when you have smart guests on here, it makes our job so much more difficult. So Rivers, goodbye. Brady, goodbye. Even mentioned Rojo, which is weird. He just had surgery to have the pins placed in his finger, and he now tests positive. Now, I used to work in healthcare. I don't know what the whole precautions and pre-op and everything, but don't you think they maybe do a COVID test before he gets admitted into a hospital, even for a post or pre-op?
No. You want to know why? I have one word. Florida.
Oh,
No. Like, what's the word going to be?
that,
I live here. Trust
that
me.
makes
There you
perfect sense.
The more you know.
Damn it.
Yeah.
That is absolutely exactly right. Genius.
There you go. Done.
Don't have surgery in Washington, D.C. unless you want gangrene, and don't bother with COVID protocols in Florida. It's just how it goes.
As somebody who's outside of Washington, D.C. and has seen the surgeries go wrong for athletes and just people in general, 100% behind that.
Holy hell.
A couple other quarterbacks, I talked about floor and having a decent floor. And I talked about the cheat code. If I'm talking about Phillip Rivers and his passing yardage upside, let's talk about people with rushing yardage upside. If Drew Brees does not return, which I would sincerely doubt that he does, given that the Saints are in a good position to make the playoffs and therefore they want to keep him, healthy. Mm-hmm. If Taysom Hill's a start against Kansas City, it's kind of hard not to start him, especially if you're the Brees manager. KC is allowing the 10th most rushing yards to quarterbacks per game. The past 4 weeks, he's a QB6 in fantasy point scoring. Look, and he's throwing the ball. Like, who ever thought that Taysom Hill could throw the ball 4 weeks ago? I didn't. I thought he was literally just a gadget person who can, get you the rushing yardage that way. But he's actually finding his targets, whether it's Michael Thomas or Jared Cook, and even the dump offs to Alvin Kamara. So I'm very okay. I'm very okay.
Yeah, just very okay, because Philadelphia was like, I thought you said this guy could pass.
Yeah, exactly.
When he had 0.9 points going into halftime, I'm not bitter at all. He's dead to me. I'm kidding. Start about the gates of Kansas City.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the Philadelphia, because here's where it's one of those with like, man, I'm going on quite the sample size here, but Jalen Hurts. I mean, if you're super desperate, and I can't even imagine why or how that would be the case.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
I'm just throwing it out there in the ether. I'm not saying to start him. I'm just throwing it out there in the ether.
Super flex 2 QB league, I'd think about it, but this is going to be a trap for him. It's like, look at the golden boy come out and shine with all of the glitter and glam because nobody has any tape on him except for when he was in college. Oh my God. Now it's like, oh, he runs this way. He can do that. And he's going to target Alshon Jeffrey and Dallas Goedert. Okay, we're good.
And now defenses have got a week to work out how he plays. So they're going to shut him down quick.
Like I said, I'm not saying do it. What I am saying,
you said it. You were starting that road.
To be fair, I yelled "do it" over you. So
I'm just saying that the Cardinals are yielding the 6th most rushing yards to a quarterback. Now let me throw out one more.
But they're fighting for their playoff hopes and dreams, and that defense is going to light him up. And I'm so scared for Jalen Hurts this week.
Hey, you should know that. You should know that after the week that Hassan Reddick had, that he's like licking his chops. You should know that Marcus Golden is ready to go. You should know Buda Baker will be up there waiting.
I'm aware of my IDPs.
I'm never going to get invited on this show ever again.
No, this is
sorry.
These are good debate, good questions to be going back and forth on. Who we got here? Teddy, what is your buddy saying? Taysom Hill is good enough to knock.
He already beat me in the playoffs. This is just mean. He beat me. He's Derrick Henry.
That is salt in the wound.
It is. He already won.
Ryan Edmonds, Hill Breeze combo taking me to the promised land. Congratulations.
And that is just who beat me. Wow.
That's who I lost with. So don't worry. There's no ones on one side of that fence.
What a fun show we have.
That's how we're spinning it. Let me ask you a question. I'll just put this out there. Russell Wilson going against this Washington front seven, which has been ridiculous. That being said, the quarterbacks that have faced Washington in the recent weeks, whether it's Mullins or Roethlisberger, they've had a decent fantasy performance. But should we be concerned at all with the fact that the offensive line for the Seahawks is not really that good? Like, they're in the middle of the pack in terms of pass blocking. Should we be concerned or temper our expectations for Russell Wilson versus the Washington football team? Let's go with David.
Play the guy that got you there, okay? I'd rather play Russell Wilson and him have an average game than bench him for someone like Jared Goff, who may give you an even worse game. I just don't like playing with fire. Play the guys that got you there. One guy I do like, though, is the love bug, Herbie Fully Loaded. I'm a big fan of him. I think it's gonna be a great game tomorrow. I mean, look, a guy that I actually think is going to be a top 5 QB as well is Derek Carr. Tomorrow's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a shootout. I think it's probably going to be the biggest shootout of the season.
I shake my head hard at this, by the way, Jeremy.
No, Jeremy, this is probably lime juice.
You shouldn't have dropped him. You shouldn't have dropped him.
This is sulfuric acid in the wound.
juice.
Okay,
Yeah.
This is lime juice. It's sulfuric acid.
You probably owned him in that league 7 times as well.
I actually traded him for Herbert.
Oh, okay, that's a good one.
Oh,
Tannehill for Herbert.
you beat you with Tannehill, Jorge.
I know.
Oh no.
It's one of those. Okay, let's talk about quarterbacks we don't like. How about we start with that? Let's go with some negativity here. Lauren, who's somebody that we don't like?
Oh yeah, go to me with the negativity. I see how it is. All right. Okay, I've got 2 that are pretty obvious here. Which somebody already brought up. I am staying as far away as possible from Cam Newton. Sorry, not feeling it. Woof to me. Another one who is a temper expectation / stay away from is going to be Teddy Bridgewater as well.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said Bridgewater because you paused for a second and I was like, we just met. Damn. Yeah, I agree, even though he's my quarterback, at least for my team. But yeah.
That's actually a really good point you bring up too. Don't get married to your players, guys. This is the worst time in the world to get emotionally married to your players. With that being said, Teddy Bridgewater is one of those amazing stories that I am absolutely in love with in the NFL. Second favorite to Alex Smith, I think, which it should be Teddy Bridgewater first, shouldn't it? But for some reason, I just love Alex Smith's story as well. So both of them coming back from pretty horrific injuries, having solid years. I mean, go Teddy Bridgewater, just not in fantasy.
Yeah, being a Washington fan, it's great seeing Alex Smith getting out there, and as well as being a fan of Teddy Bridgewater during his time in Minnesota, then the freak accident that happened to him. That being said, it's great seeing them play, but whenever I see somebody come within like a yard of them, I'm like, get down.
Yeah, like, don't touch him.
Yeah. He has the red shirt on. Exactly.
Two-hand touch for him.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the running back position here. Who are some running backs that you are confident in this week, Teddy?
I don't think Derrick Henry is going to have legs next week and you're obviously playing him, but he's playing Detroit, and Detroit sucks. He's not going to have legs. I think that another good one, obviously, I think Cam Akers we've seen, even though I think that the Rams are still going to have that weird committee thing. I don't think that it's going to be Henderson. I think that Cam Akers is going to be running all over the Jets this week, and I think that you could easily start him and probably – I think we had said at some point to stop worrying about Malcolm Brown because
I finally just got your joke, Teddy.
Which one?
He doesn't have legs.
A lot of them. Okay. Oh, yes. Because he's not going to have legs. Because he's going to run the ball.
Because he's going to be like the road runner. I get it. It's late, okay? I'm old. I'm sorry.
At 8:19, it's late there?
I'm old. I'm an old lady.
No, stop it. You're not.
Fair enough. But yeah, anyway, so other than your obvious one, I like Cam Akers and I like Mike Davis. Even though Miles Sanders had a resurgence, I don't like him this week.
Mm-hmm. Nate, what about you? What are some running back options for you?
Yeah, and Teddy and I agree with what you're saying. I don't have concern with Darrell Henderson as much. Just if you look at the last 2 weeks, the most positive thing you can take out of that is the fact that it's been a 79% and like a 70% snap share, which is the 2 highest of the season for any running backs in LA. So it's starting to trend. Maybe it actually is starting to get through McVay's beautiful hair that it's time for him to actually trust in. I mean, it's better than mine.
It does look nice. He does put a lot of work into it.
I'll tell you who I like, and it's going to base off of one thing we have to monitor. If Raheem Mostert does not play, you have an MRI early in the week, you miss practice. Going in, I like Jeff Wilson's option and opportunity this week. It is, like I said, it's dependent upon Mostert. If Mostert plays, I don't like either one because I think that would be a good mix of 50-50. Mostert has a chance to get in, and if he would be my sit if he does play because I don't like re-aggravation. I don't want to temper or mess with that. Dallas, of course, not great against opposing running backs, 7th most on the season so far. And if you look back at week 7, when Jeff Wilson actually had the majority of the lion's share of the carries, he had 56% of the snaps, 17 attempts, 112 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns is not what I'm banking on, but the yardage could be there, and maybe a touchdown would be fair.
Let's go to another question here. We got good thing it's a running back question. How much do you guys like Gus Edwards versus Jacksonville more than Zeke versus San Francisco? David, what are your thoughts here?
Last time Zeke played the Niners, he went off. He went 3 touchdowns, 100 in the air and 100 on the ground. Now I understand that was a couple of years ago. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's still,
I think to be exact.
it's still Ezekiel Elliott, and I have faith in Zeke. I'd rather go with the volume of Zeke. I know Tony Pollard gets worked in a little bit, but Zeke's still going to get volume. It's a must-win game. They're going to rely on him. Go for Zeke.
I have more faith in your son, Zeke, to run for 100 yards against the 49ers than I do. He had 2 good calves at the time. Now he has 1. Tony Pollard's eating way too much. I'm not going to sit here and argue with your play because we'll see on Sunday come that. But, I mean, I hope you're right. I mean,
yeah.
I think the other factor here, though, is more of the Ravens' backfield in the sense that we saw what they did on Monday night in that awesome game, which I would say is probably the number 2 game of the week. But other than that, you've got their wide receiver cores all on the COVID list for now, and so we have to kind of see what happens there. But if the Ravens don't have anybody to throw the ball to, they also suck at throwing already. I think they're going to run the ball the entire game.
I agree.
See, a guy that I actually was going to mention in the quarterbacks, you always say it's the starting shit show, and that is Lamar Jackson, all right? Yeah,
you did there. Very well done.
Look, to your point, they have no one to throw to. They are going to stack the box like there's no tomorrow. I think he's going to have no room to run. I know on paper it's a great matchup, but look, in an absolutely lights-out game where it was 45 or 47 to 42, and Lamar Jackson had his best game of the year, he still threw for under 200 yards, guys. He got over 100 on the ground. I get it, and 2 touchdowns, but that's not going to happen every week. I'm really worried about Lamar.
Another reason I'm worried about Jalen Hurts, and he's not Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Right.
He's not. Oh, that's good to know. I did not know that.
Just in case.
Let me ask you, Lauren.
Can you imagine Trace McSorley tearing his ACL so someone can take a dump? Yeah.
Did he tear his ACL? Did we get
I think
it looked bad.
They haven't said torn.
I saw an article saying torn ACL, but maybe I got my information wrong.
Let's see what Golden Jackets QB has to say. 49ers backfield is Jeff Wilson worth a flex start? I'm assuming if Raheem Mostert is out, I'd say.
I say yeah, for sure, personally.
Okay.
But I just also said he was one of my must starts, so I'm going to never completely backtrack over what I just said.
That's good. That's good. Unlike me, who's like, yeah, Jalen Hurts is a must start, and then hearing everybody's comments, it's like, as I was saying. So
shut your mouth.
All right, let's go back to Baltimore for a second because I do have an interesting point to bring up here. Let's say you're stuck between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and who you're going to start this week. For me, and I'm going to open this up to everybody just really quickly, I would go J.K. Dobbins just because he's getting more of the red zone carries and carries within the 5-yard line and within scoring position. That's my only rationale for J.K. Dobbins. Is there anybody that can make an argument for Gus Edwards?
I think no one could make an argument.
Nyheim Hines. He's on this. Okay, tell us more about Nyheim Hines.
Stay away from the Ravens' backfield if you can.
Okay.
I don't like it. It's stinky, and I also don't trust Cam Akers. I don't believe that McVay's suddenly like, Cam Akers is good at football. He knows he's good at football. Right now, it's like trickeration going on, and I'm so afraid that he's going to be like, look at my shiny, pretty new toy, everybody. All right, Darrell Henderson, now it's your turn. You go out and just crush with his like gigantic sandpiper legs, and he's going to go freaky ham, and everyone's going to be like, what happened to Cam Akers? The same thing that's happened every single time this year.
Now, pivot to that same enthusiasm and same situation to Indianapolis.
I'm spent. I don't even know if I can.
Well, you can do it.
The one
She's to recharge. Just give her a minute.
I have that question because I worry a little bit about that. Even though I had, Jonathan Taylor's one of my absolute, like we said,
he's on my must start as well. Yeah, it's either Jonathan Taylor or Nyheim Hines. I like both of them, depending on who it is that's on your squad.
I don't think Frank Reich is as crazy as Sean McVay, where he would try to trickeration, I think is the word that we use. And so I just wondered, I didn't know what your opinion.
Yeah, I think that Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor have different enough identities that they can be used in different roles. And I feel like that I don't get that same eyeball test when it comes to Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. And Malcolm Brown is still there. I understand that he's done practically nothing, but that doesn't mean he's done nothing all year. He's had his games as well. And when it really counts, when it's on the line for the playoffs with the Rams, I'm concerned about what he's going to do. Now, does that mean I'm not going to start Cam Akers? No, I am going to start him. I am also going to reach for Pepto-Bismol and probably drink a lot and freak out.
Speaking of that, by the way, I felt
good segue, Nate.
dirty. I have Kettle One here, unfortunately. It was
That's
left.
not Tito's.
I know it was left
It
in
is
my
acceptable.
cabinet, and I'm drinking it. I feel bad. I feel like I should apologize.
Whenever I
Nice.
What? You're
Go
getting
ahead,
ready to yell? Oh, no, he's gone.
Oh, where'd he go?
So,
Sorry,
Ted,
guys.
tell us,
I ruined it.
oh no, I'm back.
I was like,
whenever I
it's
see
just
Tito's,
vodka. I'm sorry.
I always think to myself, I'm like, Lauren should actually see if she can get sponsored.
I've tried.
Everyone-
They just give me free vodka. They're
Everyone
like, no,
on
we don't
Twitter
do that.
always
Here's
thinks
some
of
vodka. Thank you.
yeah,
I appreciate
exactly.
that.
Yeah, when you think of Tito's, you think of Stepmom Lauren, right?
Thank
do.
you.
They should realize this and capitalize on the fantasy.
My
football
mission
industry.
is accomplished.
Nice.
Thank you.
Teddy, who do you not like at running back?
Let me just come up with some random names.
Hold on,
yeah.
I can fill in if you need because I got a couple. Ezekiel Elliott is one of them.
Yeah, Zeke would be one for me. Leonard Fournette, I'm not buying into the hype train, even though Rojo is going to be out. I do not care.
I think Keyshawn Vaughn.
You can try, but yeah, I like Keyshawn Vaughn, but yeah, I'm not.
LaShawn McCoy is also a pretty legit option. Also,
he got way too many carries.
right? Like, I forgot you were in the NFL.
So did Bruce Arians. He's like,
I
oh,
love
shit.
you.
LaShawn, get in. Sorry.
Makes me
Is
so
Antonio
nervous.
Gibson back this week? Do we know?
Who?
Antonio Gibson.
I don't believe so.
We don't
He was
think so?
supposedly he was on the side in practice today. There's a report that he was at practice, but that's all he was. Is he was physically present, and that this turf toe injuries like that, they're bad. They're really, really bad. It's probably the most underrated injury, unfortunately, out
Which
there.
seems so silly because it's just your toe. Like, no, they're horrific.
Fucking horrible. Sorry.
They need to change the name of that injury because when I see turf toe, I just think, oh, he stubbed his toe slightly
Yeah.
on the turf.
Uh-huh.
Right. His toe
Right.
hurts.
Murder hornet toe, and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds terrible. Go ahead,
But
Dave.
I don't really know. Like Buffalo running back, I don't think there's any like obvious ones that I'm just like super down. I personally don't like Zeke this week. That's just me. What do we think about Rashad Penny coming back? Anybody worry about that?
No.
No.
Anybody rushing to play him?
No. I don't even think he's gone through a full practice since having his ACL injury and coming back from that. I think they just brought him back. Like, oh, you're healthy enough to practice. Like, that's a far cry from being game ready. Lauren, you mentioned Zeke. Let me ask you a question. I know we're talking about tempering expectations, and I'm putting you on the spot here. Who would you have to have on your bench to sit Zeke this week?
Everyone who is ranked an RB20 or better.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, there's a lot of options here. Tony Pollard. I might even play Tony Pollard over Zeke.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would have if I were in this position. That means I was married to Ezekiel Elliott too long, and he should have been given up in a trade a long time ago. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to, sleep in the bed that you made and just deal with what you want to do with Zeke. A lot of people can't bench him. That's completely your choice. Another name I do want to bring up here, though, is like, for example, Cam Akers. I'd play Cam Akers over Ezekiel Elliott. I'd play Nyheim Hines over Ezekiel Elliott. These guys that we're talking about.
Right.
I would not play. Actually, maybe I would just for the good floor. But Damian Harris, I don't like again.
Mhm.
Another one, this is going to be really spicy. And I don't think that a lot of people are going to agree with me. But Josh Jacobs, I would definitely consider benching him. I know it's the whole thing. Go with your studs. I understand that. But he is in touchdown dependent. RB1, maybe RB1, RB2, RB1, touchdown dependent guy in a game where they're going to be throwing the football. And he does scare me. Not only that, because he is likewise dead to me after the shenanigans he pulled last Sunday. Done. I'm over you. I have been such a Josh Jacobs truther, and that truly broke my heart.
He just burned the entire fantasy football community.
Like, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, Mr. Jacobs.
There you go.
There you
Ryan
go.
Weiss was on a show earlier, and he was saying how when that news came out, he dropped Antonio Gibson because he needed a running back to fill in for Josh Jacobs. Then he found out he was trolling and he was pissed off. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
And I get it. These guys don't really care about fantasy. That's fine. Then don't troll fantasy managers if you don't care about fantasy. Like, sorry, I don't like it. And I mean there is an argument to be made that said he was like, hey, sorry, I'm not playing, as in I'm not playing around, not as in I'm not playing in the game. And that is one.
He knew what he did.
I think so too. And I do love Josh Jacobs dearly. This matchup just doesn't scream high ceiling. And when you're in the semifinals, guys, it is go big or go home. And you're going up against people that are some of the highest scoring in the league, if not the highest scoring in the league, and you are going to have to basically outpunch them. Yep. Safety is probably not going to work, and his floor, I don't think, is high enough to really give you the kind of bang for your buck that you need. Not to mention the fact that they play on Thursday, right?
Right.
That is not what I want to do starting off my week 15 is in a hole. Right. So if I can avoid starting Josh Jacobs, I will. That doesn't necessarily mean the other pieces. I love all the Chargers, so that's a different story. But when it comes to this questionable piece with Josh Jacobs, I may find an option that I can start over him.
Yeah, and Jacobs has been most successful when they win games. When they're winning is when they can pound and ground, stay on the – and I think that with the losses on the Vegas side, Clelin Ferrell, Jonathan Abrams, the list goes on and on as far as the players that they're missing. I think that gives an opportunity for the Chargers to – stay ahead and force Derek Carr. So then it goes with you, Dave. You were saying Derek Carr is a good start. I think that might be true. And it turns into which we'll get to some of our favorite maybe starts from the wide receiver position or tight end that might lead into this exact game.
That's amazing that you just said that, because look at that. Oh, look. Let's talk about wide receiver and tight end starts and sits. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. The past few weeks, 18 fantasy points per game, wide receiver 6. I mean, he's a must start this week. Do you think against the Dallas Cowboys secondary?
Absolutely. He's going to absolutely torch him.
He, in the last 2 games played, 25 targets, 15 receptions, 214 yards, a touchdown. 8th best in the NFL at 14.3 yards per reception. 6th best in the NFL at 6.1 yards after the catch per reception. Dallas has allowed 6 touchdowns over the past 4 to the wide receiver, 7th most overall to the wide receiver position.
I need to check with my numbers guy, but that's good, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds good.
Okay. I just got your text, David. Yes, those are good numbers.
I just smile and nod.
I'm like, oh, these are numbers.
Lauren, you mentioned Phillip Rivers earlier. Does this mean, with his recent resurgence, that we're starting T.Y. Hilton with confidence this week?
I do like T.Y. Hilton. That's a matchup. He's in one of my starts. Brandon Ayuk is definitely a start that you set him and you forget him at this point. I mean, I absolutely adore him. Let me make sure I'm not in my sits at wide receivers. Hang on. Yes, Brandon Ayuk, there he is. One, I do think you need to start Terry McLaurin. I know it's been stinky, but I think he should have a good bounce back game with Seattle. Caveat, though, they have been very stingy the last 2 and 4 weeks that they've played. They have been stingy. But I think that he can have a nice bounce back game, especially with Alex Smith if he is healthy. But here's what I want someone to think about. If you guys are desperate for like a flex play or a wide receiver position, do not ignore Keelan Cole for the Jaguars. I understand the matchup is garbage, but Gardner Minshew is back, and he does like to target Keelan Cole, in addition to DJ Chark, who's his long down deep field threat. But if you guys are desperate, especially in deep leagues, see if Keelan Cole's available to plug in that lineup if you need a starter at that position.
If Dwayne Haskins is starting for Washington, are you as confident in Terry McLaurin?
No, but he may be one of those guys I just have to put in, and then I'm going to do my swing for the fences at another wide receiver spot or maybe different positions at the running back. But he just has that ceiling that is very difficult to just dismiss. And here's another thing too, Nate, you were mentioning this. I would much rather, actually, no, I think Mr. Fantasy Go was doing this. I can't remember who it was. Just go with it. So when it comes to my starts and sits, I always put it in a worst case scenario. If I lose, would I feel worse starting somebody that somebody else told me to, but I didn't believe in it, as opposed to starting the guy I wanted to, but he didn't do as well, or benching the guy that I believed in because it wasn't popular, and then he blows up on my bench and I end up losing for it? Weigh those pros and cons as well, because your gut is trying to tell you something. It is minutely putting together little pieces of information subconsciously that's trying to tell you something. That's why I always say trust and follow your gut.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jeremy's gut has a question here. Let's go back to Jeremy. Brandon Ayuk over Michael Thomas. You said not to be attached to name value at this point of the season. Does that hold true for you this week with this question?
I would try to find a way to put both of them in there if you can possibly squeeze one of them in as your flex. But I would play Brandon Ayuk over Michael Thomas. I know that is very difficult to do. He has been getting targets with Taysom Hill, but Taysom Hill also uses his legs. So there is another threat to that offense just besides having to pass. There's also better wide receivers available. Not better, excuse me. There are also good wide receivers as opposed to where Brandon Ayuk is pretty much the biggest name in town on the 49ers. The Saints also have Emmanuel Sanders. They have Jared Cook. They obviously have Michael Thomas. They have Traquan Smith. I think he's healthy. But there's a lot of other names on the Saints that I think if you really want, in my opinion, what I think is going to be a better, safer, higher ceiling, if that makes any sense, it kind of sounds like it'd be an oxymoron, but I feel like it's a much safer high ceiling is going to be Brandon Ayuk.
All right.
Spicy though. It is spicy.
No, but it's not as much as you would think, right? Just given his recent performance the past 3 games played and just, the situation that's going on in New Orleans. Teddy, who's a wide receiver that you don't like this week, or a few wide receivers you don't like this week?
So, as you may have read on Fantasy and Frames a few weeks ago, I did an article about Tyler Lockett, and even though he was wide receiver 6, you should be nervous going forward. This was one of those games that I mentioned that you should be nervous going forward facing Washington. I think you can make a lot of comparisons between this defense and the Rams defense. And even though, because that's kind of what I looked up whenever we were talking about, could you see yourself sitting Russell Wilson this week? And I think, honestly, that you could. And with that, I think that it kind of downgrades basically everybody. And I think that Metcalf is going to take a hit, but I still like him more than Lockett. I think Lockett is going to be on the receiving end of the hit that he's going to take in this one. So I don't like Lockett this week. DJ Moore might play, but I'm really hoping he doesn't do very well for ulterior reasons. If Antonio Brown, I think I'm kind of done with. I know that he's going to be solid, but I don't think he's going to be near the hype that everybody was giving him when he joined that offense.
A guy who in tomorrow's night, going to stay in the Flames of tomorrow's night game, has a glorious matchup. Is Nelson Aguilar.
Well done.
Actually, in my mind, that sounded better than it was. But anyway,
I think it sounded pretty good. These guys just didn't laugh. I think they were so blown away by the play on words that they were like, did I hear this amazingness correctly? They did.
It's not that. It's just he has set the bar so high over the course of the season that I was kind of hoping for more. But for what you had to work with, it was still solid.
Come on, man. Give me something.
I did. I said it was solid.
But nonetheless, look, this is a guy who's been scoring pretty consistently. Derek Carr has been looking pretty good, excluding that one game against the Falcons. Write that off. A guy who I'm pretty comfortable with. I think he's good for a touchdown. He's always looking for him in the red zone. He's actually somewhat of a deep threat now. So I think he's found a good fit, there in Las Vegas. So I'm more than happy to fire him up as a wide receiver too.
He found his fingers when he went to Vegas. He's like, oh, here they are. Look, I can catch. Wow.
That's all he needed to do, just change the scenery. For me, it's Michael Pittman Jr. I know the hype train was there for him. He's the second most targeted wide receiver for the Colts. Yes, the Colts are passing more, but he's only averaging 38.7 yards per game. No, thank you. I'll move on to somebody else. Jamison Crowder, easy, low-hanging fruit. Why? Because #Jets, not starting him this week. As far as tight ends are concerned, look, I know Seattle is pretty good against the tight end position, but whether it's Alex Smith or Dwayne Haskins, it's kind of hard for me to sit Logan Thomas at this point of the season.
So good.
He's just become a good focal point of that offense. It's kind of hard not to.
He totally looks like a Travis Kelce, George Kittle 2.0 Washington style. He is big. He is athletic. He can block. He's on the field all the time. He's amazing.
Right. Now, one tight end that I want to get into with Nate is, we were talking about this before the show. He's for, I'm against Eric Ebron. Nate, why are you for Eric Ebron this week?
It's matchup based first and foremost. Cincinnati is that's the matchup. And despite what Brooke had gotten out of Ben Roethlisberger, he's not just that bad of a quarterback. And that is a shout out to Teddy's wife and asked Ben about his particular throws, and they were off. And I'm going to give some of his poor throws to why Eric Ebron didn't come up with all the balls, because I'm just going to err on the side of caution. You can have drops. You guys just said Nelson Aguilar got his hands back, and he's like second in the league in drops.
It's a different team in a different year. We're talking about last week and the week before and the week before and the week before that. It's like celebrated if he comes down with the football, but it hits him in the numbers. You can't drop the ball.
Nelson Aguilar has, I believe, the third most drops this year in the NFL.
Really?
I didn't say to start Nelson Aguilar first and foremost.
I am
don't
not
trust Nelson
complaining you.
Aguilar,
I
but
am
Eric
defending my
Ebron,
reason. My reason is defending the drops
and
and the
I'm
potential.
disagreeing with it.
I'll say now, start Nelson Aguilar, because here's the difference between Aguilar and Ebron. Aguilar's coach didn't come out and say, if you keep dropping the ball, I'll find somebody else to catch the ball.
Yeah, that didn't work last week, did it? Because he still all dropped the ball, and Ben still targeted all of them.
Well,
Continue.
he took Deontay Johnson out of the game and put in James Washington for a good majority of
Yeah,
that
they
game.
did actually.
Even when Ebron, he was missing a few passes, you saw Vance McDonald see the field a little bit more. That is my stance there on Ebron. I just feel like Coach Speak is real in this situation.
Nelson Aguilar is going to be a really high ceiling for you. If you remember before when I'm saying if you're going to start someone who gives you someone like Josh Jacobs, who can give you a terrible outing on a Thursday, your swing for the fences guy would be someone like Nelson Aguilar. If you're looking for someone that has a higher floor, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be Nelson Aguilar. But in this particular matchup, he does have an incredibly high ceiling, but I think he's a little bit more boom or bust. Where I just think Eric Ebron is not going to be a solid start. Now watch him blow up. I guess I'm really bitter against Eric Ebron because he's done really well. But for some reason, I'm like, no, done.
I wish he
I
never
don't know why,
left.
because I really like him as a person. He's a great follow.
Well, that's good to know. I really wish he never left Indianapolis, because whatever Frank Reich was able to do there to correct those drops hasn't come with him to Pittsburgh. So that's unfortunate there. Noah Fant, I know tight end is shallow. And
Also dead to me. Continue.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, he's dead to a lot of people, including the starting roster, because he can never really stay on the field to do anything. I think he got you like 0 points literally last week.
Literally, he didn't even get a target before he's like, gotta use the bathroom. I'm sickies.
To his credit, he caught 100% of passes a few weeks ago.
Was it two?
Was it one?
I'll pass.
Yeah.
It was one, but technically he caught 100% of the whole Broncos passes. All right.
I like it.
That's right. That was with their wide receiver.
That was Hinton under
Jeremy
center.
Noble, us and all Lions fans.
Yeah.
I hear you on that one. Talking about Eric Ebron.
Yeah, seriously. Let's see here. Who else? I like Jared Cook this week. Dave, you'll like this one. Gronk. Here's the thing with Gronkowski. Everyone sees the red zone highlight of him catching that touchdown, and then you look at what his stat line was for the rest of the game. Wasn't that great?
No.
In fact, he hasn't really been that great, even though there's been the increase in targets with Tom
He went for
Brady.
100 yards the week before.
Right.
They didn't need to throw the ball. They constantly had about a 10 to 14 point lead the whole game. They were running the ball, little dink and dunks. They were just churning the clock. So I don't think they needed Gronk.
I think this week they're just going to take advantage of Atlanta's poor secondary and just go to town on Atlanta this week. To be honest with you. And speaking of Atlanta, I didn't mention this earlier for quarterbacks, but Matt Ryan, you are dead to me.
And Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley is. I own him in 147% of leagues, and I'm sitting him everywhere. So
that is a high percentage, my friend.
Yeah, Matt Ryan's also on my sit list.
Same.
You almost said it.
I did. And just by the way, if anyone does need to play Eric Ebron, it is a really good matchup play. I'm not wanting anyone to be like, but she told me not to do it. I'm being facetious and slightly bitter when I complain about his dropsies.
I totally understand. And
Same with Deontay Johnson.
Samesies.
Wow, really? Sames. Okay.
That's what
You
she
can
said.
pick one from this trash pile.
Yeah.
Higgins, Shark, Mims, Sanders. For me, it's Shark just because Gardner Minshew's back.
I agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Anybody else disagree?
It's
or-
not that bad, bro.
I like
There could
Mims.
be way worse.
I don't mind Mims, to be honest. I think this might be his first big game of the season. I'm okay
Would you
with
play Mims over DJ Chark?
it. I would. I really would. I mean, look at what Chark did last week. He had 9 targets and caught 2 balls.
I was going to ask you if you can walk straight with those gigantic cojones playing Mims over Chark, but
Chark got 2 out of 9 targets last week. You really want me going into playoffs with a guy with that catch percentage?
did Minshew play the whole game?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't really matter who's under center.
Well,
Minshew isn't that
how many targets of those 9 were going to Chark, and how many of them were under duress? I mean, I think it's important to look at the play. But for me, there's a lot of history between Gardner Minshew and DJ Chark, whereas I'm not 100% sold on Mims yet with McLaurin there. So are we talking about Denzel Mims or?
Yeah, Denzel Mims, I thought we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
There's another one.
Mims is the one for Washington. I was thinking of.
Sims.
I thought Mims was hurt.
Sims
Mims and
Same thing.
dimwits. I don't know.
I can play in him.
Will Mims
Anyone
get
who Mims.
So I don't know how well or how
But I
many
do.
times
I
they
will
ran.
agree with you on that one though, because I was thinking of somebody else. That's a huge toss up for me between DJ Chark and Denzel Mims. If he's 100% healthy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
but he's playing the Rams. They're
Right.
the best wide receivers in fantasy. It's like I don't love that.
That's
no,
true.
I don't love that. I would probably say Chark. I'm going to say Higgins only because second, close first with Higgins, just because if Pittsburgh's susceptible to any position whatsoever, it's the wide receiver position, which is just because they're usually ahead and the other team has to pass the ball enough times. I mean, theoretically, that's the only option there. But I'm hoping this is Ryan Edmonds in my league and we give him the wrong information since I'm bitter for him beating me and no longer being in the playoffs. But
Ryan E, are you Ryan Edmonds? Please respond.
Please.
yeah, and if that's
Oh,
the
you
case,
know it is.
of course.
All right, let's finish up the show with a little IDP talk. We love IDP. We feel like, if you understand offense, why not understand defense? It gives you a good perspective on both sides of the ball, helps you to understand a little bit more why you're starting, not just who you're starting. Nate, who do you like this week for? Just throw out a couple IDP players that you're a fan of this week.
So obviously, like we were talking about earlier, Chase Young is in a good matchup there. I think against Seattle. Olivier Vernon is in a pretty good position against the Giants, mostly because, offensive lines, potential number of sacks. We had a discussion about Jerome Baker in Miami. Jerome Baker, last time he played against the Patriots, had the best game of his probably career. I don't hate that matchup. I think that it's going to be a centric game, meaning a lot of the plays over the middle, and I think that gives a lot of tackle volume. And Jerome Baker last week had four blitzes, which is abnormal for him. So I think it's going to be going forward. And then in the secondary, the guy I've been talking about for 7 weeks now, Cameron Curl, probably one of the more underrated defensive backs in the league, going in a great matchup here. He's first amongst all defensive backs in solo tackles since he came into the league, or since he took over for Landon Collins. Love him. Think he's a must start. That's about
Try
what
not
I got.
to make a joke about his brother bicep.
So if I could go for a couple sets here, let me go with a couple of high-profile IDP players that people, if they don't know, they should know as far as these people's names are concerned. Bobby Wagner, Seattle Seahawks linebacker. Look, he's not only one of the best linebackers in all of football, he's one of the best IDP options in all of football. But I said it last week, and it's holding true that Jamal Adams going over there from going to Seattle from the New York Jets has capped Bobby Wagner's tackle upside just because Adams is faster. He's getting to the ball carrier faster. That's taking away the tackle opportunities for Bobby Wagner. I think his ceiling is rather low. I would rather play Tyrell Adams of the Houston Texans over Bobby Wagner this week. And Cameron Jordan, defensive lineman for the New Orleans Saints, he's very boomer bust. He'll get you that 13-point game, that 3-sack game, and then everybody's like, oh, my God, it's Cameron Jordan. He has the name value. He's giving me all these, and then next week he gives you like a tackle or like as it was a couple weeks ago, a half a tackle. Whereas Trey Hendrickson for the New Orleans Saints, while Cameron Jordan is the name value, offensive lines are keying on him, which frees up Trey Hendrickson, who I believe is leading the team with 10.5 sacks on the season. He's, I think, in the top 5 or at least top 10 in all of the NFL in sacks on the season. So I would definitely stick with Hendrickson going this week. And as far as a start, you said Cameron Curl, Nate. I think Jabril Peppers for the New York Giants is also in strong consideration there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, let's see what we got in here. What do you? We don't get your Dumb and Dumber reference, Jeremy. I don't know. Oh, Sims tonight. Okay, I get it now. Okay,
I was way off.
I was way off.
I didn't realize I was on mute, but the Mims and Sims, it was, I was way off. So yeah. He was doing a joke. Yeah. Because I mixed up Denzel Mims.
Right.
And
yeah. Okay.
Which Sims?
I got it, Jeremy. I got it.
Cam Sims or Steve Sims?
David.
Steve Sims has been. Let me tell you about Steve Sims.
Isn't it Charles? Oh, no. Charles Sims, are old running back. Don't worry. Ignore me.
From like the 80s?
No.
He's making a comeback.
Hey, missing bad.
Who was the Sims running back for Tampa Bay? Running back for Tampa Bay about 3 years ago. Isn't that Charles Sims?
It might be, actually. Yeah. Damn it.
Yeah.
It sucks. I was hoping it was a lot longer than that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever.
And with that wraps up our start and sit show. Ooh, I got that right. This week, we want to thank stepmom Lauren Carpenter. Thank you for coming on. I know it's a busy week for you. Playoffs are right here. Semifinals are here. And for you to take the time to come and join us here at Fantasy and Frames, we definitely appreciate that. So thank you very much. And we hope to have you back on in the off season and keep on talking some fantasy football with you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
David, you're a brother from another mother from fantasygo.com. Head over to fantasygo.com today. Hire your favorite fantasy football analyst to help get you to your fantasy football championships this year. Teddy, Nate, as always, it is fantastic talking to you guys. Well, the Four-Eyed fans out there, if we didn't answer your questions or there are players that we didn't cover that you want to hear more about, reach out to us at Fantasy and Frames on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as you see all of our Twitter handles right here. Follow us, ask us questions. DMs are open. Definitely there to help you win your fantasy football championships. And always go to fantasyandframes.com to read all of our articles to get you ready for this week's matchup. So for Lauren, for David, for Teddy, for Nate, I'm Jorge. See you next week.
Adios.